As many of you may know by now, Overwatch 2 is currently in a rather embarrassing position on Steam. It is currently the worst user-reviewed game on Steam ever in the platform's history. Looking at the review score now, it is sitting at overwhelmingly negative from over 152,000 reviews. Among those reviews, only 9% have rated this game positively. The rest have given it a thumbs down. And you can see right here, there's a website that keeps track of the worst user-rated games on Steam ever, labeled the Hall of Shame. And Overwatch is taking the crown here with a 9%, with second place belonging to War of the Three Kingdoms at 12%. So this is a significant margin, and the fact that this is coming from over 152,000 reviews makes this a very definitive, overwhelmingly negative review score. And things aren't faring much better on Metacritic, where the user score is sitting at 1.4 from 3,756 ratings on PC at least. And with the mass downvoting of the game on Steam in particular, it's something that caught the attention of Blizzard, as they recently directly responded to this occurrence, as reported here by news outlet Kotaku. Blizzard's response was published on the official Overwatch website via the following blog post published on August 18th, 2023 by Aaron Keller, who's the director of Overwatch 2. He talks about the release of Overwatch 2 Invasion, which includes new heroes, a new mode, as well as the story missions that was supposed to be a part of a larger PvE experience that would have comprised of the story missions and the hero missions. But the hero missions, which a lot of people were looking forward to, has been scrapped. That was the mode where you were supposed to be able to customize your heroes through skill trees that you'd be able to customize to straight up change how your heroes play and then take them out on a wide variety of missions. All of that stuff turned out to be a lot more ambitious than Blizzard could realize, so they decided to scrap it altogether, to the disappointment of many, as that was what a lot of people were looking forward to and what was supposed to justify the 2 in Overwatch 2. But now Overwatch 2 feels like a glorified update to Overwatch 1. But you can see right here, the director talks about the new hero Illari. He talks about the Flashpoint mode, the story missions, but he also addresses how we also launched on Steam last week, likely in an effort to boost Overwatch 2 players, to just bring in new audiences by releasing it on the more popular platform. They usually release games on just the Battle.net platform. That's just how Activision Blizzard has done things. But Overwatch 2's popularity has waned, so I feel like this is in part a strategy to try to draw more people into the game. So they launched on Steam last week, and although being review bombed, directly acknowledged here, isn't a fun experience, it's been great to see lots of new players jump into Overwatch 2 for the first time. So it seemed as though the strategy did work. Apparently they are seeing an influx of players, both because there's just new content, a new mode, a new hero, and story missions, and also because the game is just more accessible now. Our goal with Overwatch 2 has been to make the game more accessible than ever, there we go, for more people than ever before. Many of the reviews on Steam mention the cancellation of the much larger component of PvE, the hero missions, that was announced in 2019 as one of their primary reasons for dissatisfaction with the game. I love how they don't even mention hero missions anymore. They just say, there's that one thing people keep talking about that shall not be named. It's the hero missions. I don't know why omit the name altogether. I get that, he says, that people are dissatisfied with the cancellation of that mode. That announcement was about an ambitious project that we ultimately couldn't deliver. But the thing is, this wasn't just something that was announced. It was like a flagship element of Overwatch 2 that was marketed over and over again and hyped up continuously before it was announced after the game's launch that this PvE mode would be scrapped, after people bought the game, and after they knew for months that this mode would be scrapped, but decided to not disclose that because they knew it might potentially impact the optics surrounding Overwatch 2 and could potentially impact the sales of Overwatch 2 during its launch period. So in that sense, it feels like a bit of a deception where they knew this was going to happen, and yet they decided to kind of drag people by the nose for a little bit before they're like, oh, by the way, surprise. And I have little doubt that this was a decision on the leadership side of things. I don't know how high up the ladder this decision goes, but somebody in the higher up elements of Activision Blizzard decided, let's not talk about this until it's the right time, until after people have bought the game. And let's not spoil the optics surrounding Overwatch 2 more than they already were. I mean, the optics were already not great when Overwatch 2 first launched. And when Overwatch 2 was announced and it was shown that it doesn't look like a huge step forward from Overwatch 1. But again, the hero missions, at the very least, people are like, okay, that's new and that seems substantial. So that, if they nail that, then maybe I'll be like, okay, this is Overwatch 2. It feels like a full-fledged PvE experience, but that's no longer the case. And so that puts Activision Blizzard and Overwatch, the IP, in an awkward position. He continues, if we can't turn back the clock, then what can we do? We can keep adding to and improving Overwatch 2. That is how we move forward. This means more maps, heroes, game modes, missions, stories, events, cool cosmetics and features, an ever-expanding, evolving, and improving game. This is the future of Overwatch. I think he forgot to mention the monetization elements that permeate the game and that in many ways corrupt the progression loop of the game, and that sense of feeling like the game rewards you for the time that you invest in the game rather than just the money that you invest in it. There's just so much more stuff that feels like you have to pay for, and the fact that heroes aren't unlocked automatically for you unless you grind through the free battle pass or you pay $10 for the premium battle pass that will unlock those heroes automatically, combined with a lot of the coolest cosmetics straight up just being paywalled, being impossible to earn, and just being a worse monetization system than freaking loot boxes from Overwatch 1, which is already controversial because it was essentially gambling. Like it, you know, that's the stuff that doesn't get mentioned here that really does affect every part of the long-term experience of this live service. And, you know, I hope that they manage to pull it back somehow and that future content releases will really feel substantial enough where it'll rekindle my passion for Overwatch. But for my part, as someone who played Overwatch 1 heavily throughout the lifespan of that game, it was like my go-to competitive shooter for a long time. You know, at this stage, I just have no interest in the future of Overwatch. I'm so deflated by everything happening to this game, and I'm so not feeling hopeful about how all this will play out, and I'm so tired of the way the game keeps goading me into trying to spend more and more, and I'm just kind of tired of all of it, and I've moved on to greener pastures. But if they can bring it back somehow, you know, if they can really improve the experience, great. But I'm still waiting for that to happen. And the addition of story missions that are, you know, well made, especially where the cutscenes and the dialogue between characters is concerned, but ultimately isn't that big a deal, and they're fairly short, and they're charging $15 for these story missions after scrapping the hero missions PvE. All of that makes it something that I don't feel like I have to tune into. It makes me feel like I can skip the story missions and just not be invested in all of this, especially when the story missions are not a complete package, but rather the first chapter of many. It's not a full-fledged campaign. It is just the first episode, essentially. And they're going to charge $15, or I don't know if exactly $15, but they are going to charge money every time they release new story content. This has been confirmed. As reported by Kotaku here in their impressions piece of Overwatch 2 Invasion, every new set of story missions will need to be purchased in order to access them, which is complete bullshit. This is starting to feel like it'll become more and more like Destiny 2, where it's not necessarily free to play, but rather free to access. And if you really want the full breadth and depth of content, you do have to shell out money. Free-to-play players are not going to get the complete experience. And it'd be one thing if the story missions were really substantial and really rich in content, but we're talking about 3 story missions that are $15 in price. And the only thing that might make this bundle worth it, this Overwatch 2 Archives bundle that gives you permanent access to the Invasion story missions, is if you were planning to get the Battle Pass to begin with, because this does give you 1,000 Overwatch coins, which can buy you the premium Battle Pass. So if that was your plan, this bundle technically costs you $5. But given the bad will that's been generated by Overwatch 2, and given that the goal is to draw in more players, them locking the story missions, which is a substantial piece of content for this free-to-play game, behind a paywall just seems like a really tone-deaf idea. Impressions surrounding the story missions themselves range from, actually, it's pretty good, to meh, they're fine. Nobody says it's like earth-shattering. Nobody's saying like this is going to be what brings you back to Overwatch 2. But generally, there's a sentiment of, okay, like these missions do feel like challenging and fun, and the cutscenes are cool, and the story developments are nice and all that. But ultimately, when it comes to the question of is it worth your money, here's a piece by Kotaku where they're like, I don't know. I don't think so, really. Scrolling further down, the Kotaku article elaborates further. Is the $15 extra cost worth it? Well, heroes are locked behind the Battle Pass. You have to grind for them through the free Battle Pass or fork over $10 for the premium one, which grants you immediate access to the newest character. Legendary skins, which used to be found in loot boxes you could either earn or pay for, are difficult to get now without forking over money. Best skins, often shown in the trailers for new seasons, are only available for purchase in the in-game store, and every new set of story missions will need to be purchased in order to access them. The game already feels way too monetized as it is, and the fact that they're just adding an extra layer through substantial content that's not just cosmetics, but rather a substantial aspect of the game, the story missions, the fact that they're paywalling that, like that is gameplay affecting stuff right there. You know what I mean? It's experience affecting stuff, and they're going to do it every time they release new story content. If they would have shipped a full-fledged campaign experience with the story missions and alongside that the PvE hero missions, then it would have felt like a complete enough package where they could have gotten away with charging extra for that substantial piece of PvE content. But this is a shadow of what was originally promised, and $15 for that? Like, come on. And for them to do that every time, however much they're going to charge for these story missions with new releases, I imagine it's going to be $15 every time, but I don't know for sure. Like, come on. And yeah, these story missions, they aren't that long. They're like 20 to 30 minutes each is what the general consensus has been. So an hour and a half experience tops. And yeah, there are multiple difficulties, and you can challenge yourself by tackling them in the hardest difficulty. And that, you know, you can potentially get more hours out of it. But the base experience of, you know, getting through the missions as if it were a campaign experience, you're really only talking about an hour and a half worth of gameplay. And even when it comes to replayability, some would argue that the replayability is questionable. As for what other outlets have been saying about the Overwatch 2 story missions, well, here's Digital Trends, who said that the missions did live up to the players' expectations, even if it still feels like we're only getting a part of a greater whole. It does not feel like a complete arc or a complete story or a complete campaign. It feels like only the first act of a larger story. Digital Trends straight up says here that the most disappointing aspect of Overwatch 2 story missions is that the story itself isn't complete at release, which is what like Anthem suffered from. Here's an impressions piece from .esports. They say that both fans of Overwatch lore and FPS players addicted to a challenge will find a lot to enjoy with Invasion's missions. Again, the content itself is not bad, it's just not substantial enough to justify the price point. Not to mention that .esports brings up the point of if these missions had released when Overwatch was at the apex of its popularity and positive sentiments, it would have gone down better. I just can't help but wonder if the excitement for these PvE missions would have been way more palpable several years ago. It just feels like these missions would have been better served years ago while the game was at the peak of its popularity. Other outlets like PC Game Zen have pointed out that, once again, the story missions are charming and they're not bad at all. They can be fun for how long they last, but the weight of expectations hangs heavy. This editor's experience is that the missions themselves are a whole lot of fun, but there is the shadow that looms in regards to the hero missions that aren't made up for by the story missions, because nothing in these missions is truly revolutionary. They're fun and all, but nothing groundbreaking, nothing earth-shattering, nothing worth saying now's the time to play Overwatch 2. Nothing to make up for the fact that, unfortunately for Invasion, its arrival among the greater context of the Overwatch 2 PvE's long-standing saga, referring to the hero missions, makes it feel perhaps more important than it could possibly ever have lived up to. This article also echoes sentiments that what's here is neat, but is it $15 neat? No, as a one-off package presented as the first true arrival of Overwatch 2 PvE, and with a $15 minimum buy-in price, I think a lot of players will feel underwhelmed by what Invasion has to offer. And finally, here we have an article from The Verge, which had a more tepid response to the Invasion event, stating that Overwatch 2 needs a win. The Invasion event, at best, is a draw. This article criticizes Flashpoint for its simplicity and it being too similar to existing game types. It just didn't work for this particular editor. Scrolling further down, the article makes mention of the story missions being just okay. I didn't really feel like the story itself was doing anything new, especially with respects to the characters. I returned to this game over and over specifically because of the characters. I'd hoped the missions would offer me some new nugget to latch onto, and it didn't. Now, it is clarified here that the story missions aren't bad, which is what everyone's saying. Nothing about the story missions are offensive. They're neat. They're fun. They're a nice little thing to go through if you're still playing Overwatch 2. They're actually a pleasant, if ho-hum experience, exacerbated by the fact that I was playing with bots. But 3 20 to 30 minute missions that essentially repackage the typical Overwatch quick play experience in admittedly gorgeous new locations is a tough buy for someone looking to fall in love with the game again, especially since you have to pay an extra $15 for it. Yeah, these same sentiments you can see are echoed over and over and over again by numerous outlets. And then on Reddit, when it comes to community sentiments, there's somebody here asking if Invasion was worth $15 for you. There are folks saying that it was worth $5. This individual was going to buy the Battle Pass, so that $10 value offered by the fact that the package, the $15 package, gives you 1,000 coins to buy the next Battle Pass, makes it technically a $5 expense for this individual. For $5, this person's like, yeah, for $5 it was worth it. And some people did have a great time with the character interactions, the game cutscenes and all that, but gameplay-wise, it may not appeal to players who aren't fans of hold out the spot and defend waves of attackers, which is what the entirety of the gameplay ultimately comprises. There's no fascinating and cool like level design stuff per se. It's more about the set pieces and the cutscenes, the character interactions, and the bombastic nature of the expanded levels and all these things, which might satisfy some, but for $15, it's certainly not going to satisfy the masses. Others complain about the length of the story missions. They were fun, but they're far too short. I completed them in a couple hours, and they don't leave much incentive to go back and play them again. Replayability is, in fact, called into question. I'm happy with 1,000 credits and Soj skin, though. So overall, I can't complain. So again, those who are existing Overwatch 2 players and are still going through the battle passes and are going through the grind and are just looking for more reasons to keep them engaged, like, it'll serve them well enough. But for everyone else who have fallen out of Overwatch, or for a community that's still upset about the way they handled the hero missions and are looking for some kind of redemption, it doesn't seem like this is quite it. And I suppose only time will tell whether future story mission releases and content releases and updates and events can gradually improve over time, or if it'll just be kind of a steady decline, or just kind of a ho-hum long-term experience. We'll see. In the meantime, though, this is everything you need to know about the current state of Overwatch 2, Blizzard's response to the overwhelmingly negative review score of Overwatch 2 on Steam, it becoming the worst user-reviewed game on Steam of all time, and what people are generally saying about the release of story missions, the first substantial piece of PvE content. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.